The Edwards Plateau ecoregion is the Texas Hill Country. Bordering the rolling plains to the north and the Trans-Pecos to the west, this ecoregion stretches as far south as the border of Mexico and the cities of San Antonio and Austin to the east.
The Edwards Plateau ecoregion is about 24 million acres, or 7,800,000 hectares. It's about the size of West Virginia. Early historical accounts have it as a mid to tall grass prairie with oak savannas, scattered oak trees throughout, with hardwoods and some ash juniper on the bottoms and what we call the drainages or the gullies.
The Edwards Plateau is transected by a number of rivers, sinkholes, caves, and rocky outcroppings. This karst topography hosts some of the most specialized species in the world.
The Edwards Plateau is known internationally across the globe for its karst topography. Endemic species that are found here, the golden-cheeked warbler, for example, only nest in Texas. The cave-dwelling species, from the invertebrates to the bat communities that we have, are truly amazing.
Just northwest of San Antonio, Bracken Cave is said to host over 20 million Mexican free-tailed bats, noted as the largest concentration of mammals at any one cave in the world. The Edwards Plateau also supports much smaller species like the federally endangered Barton Springs salamander near Austin.
Karst habitats and the species that inhabit them are extremely vulnerable for several reasons. Number one, due to their extreme locality. They may be abundant in one location and not found anywhere else. They're also highly vulnerable due to water quality issues. Many of the species that exist in these karst environments are dependent upon pure water. And this water may be polluted from a city that may be miles and miles away.
As new housing developments sprawl beyond the suburbs and into the Texas Hill Country, the resulting land fragmentation is gradually decreasing wildlife habitats.
The Edwards Plateau is one of the fastest growing areas in the nation. People are moving in from all over the country. They're finding land prices cheaper in this area than they would in their home states. The problem is that we're breaking up large historical ranches into smaller and smaller pieces.
Creating urban-like neighborhoods in the Hill Country often brings with it urban land use practices. Some of those practices can produce damaging ripple effects for wildlife.
The fragmentation's bad enough, but when they go in and clear off all the native species and put introduced species, plant species in, there's no utilization by wildlife. When that happens, the wildlife that is there is pushed out into smaller and smaller habitats. Therefore, overcrowding, overpopulations result. We've got a tremendous overpopulation of white-tailed deer.
Unfortunately, white-tailed deer aren't very discriminating in their tastes and will eat just about anything from ground level up to about 5 feet. And that completely eliminates the understory vegetation for other wildlife to use. When they do that, they prevent the forest from regenerating itself, and lots of different species require that understory in order to nest or roost. You have the same issue with allowing livestock to overgraze an area. With overgrazing, we see a change in the habitat. We see brush starting to grow, like mesquite and ash juniper, and we see erosion begin.
Along with impacts of an increased deer population and overgrazing by livestock, the absence of natural fire has also contributed to brush growth in the Edwards Plateau.
That fire kept the brush species suppressed. When modern man, early settlers moved in, the suppression of fire caused an increase in brush species. That, along with introduction of livestock on the Edwards Plateau, both cattle, sheep, and goats, they took out the grasses. Erosion happened at an alarming rate. Ash juniper is the winner, so to say. It just basically outcompetes. Ash juniper offers very little in the way of a food source. There are a few songbirds that take its seed and that help spread it, obviously. It offers shelter for all wildlife species, some nesting substrate. Obviously, golden-cheeked warbler depend on its shredding bark of the mature ash juniper for their nesting materials. But what we call second growth cedar, or the cedar under 10, 12, 14 feet, is what we consider the invasive plants.
Uncontrolled growth of cedar has hydrological impacts as well.
The thing about cedar trees is that they've been shown to intercept a tremendous amount of moisture from the atmosphere when it rains. And they evapotranspire this moisture back into the atmosphere. And what that means is rainfall that used to penetrate the ground no longer penetrates the ground when you have a heavy cover of cedar trees.
By removing dense areas of cedar, landowners can lessen the strain on the Edwards Aquifer, the region's largest groundwater supply. Two bird species hardest hit by this continued urban sprawl in the Edwards Plateau are the golden-cheeked warbler and the black-capped vireo.
The golden-cheeked warbler is listed as an endangered species because of land fragmentation, loss of habitat, the cutting of mature ash juniper by early settlers. Deciduous hardwoods, the oaks, have been cleared in some areas for agricultural practices, and land fragmentation, development. We're losing many acres to land development, people moving out into the Edwards Plateau. The black-capped vireo is a unique species. It's about 4 inches tall. The males are real distinct black color on their head with striping, with a greenish yellow body with gray tones mixed in. It's a songbird. They come here in March and set up their territories. The males can be found singing throughout the nesting season.
With continued development in the Edwards Plateau, protecting habitats for the golden-cheeked warbler and the black-capped vireo is a priority.
The Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, along with the other non-governmental organizations and agencies, both federal and state, have done an excellent job of educating landowners and developers in what is golden-cheeked warbler habitat and what is not, and doing all we can to minimize those impacts. Habitat conservation plans offset or mitigate for the damages done to golden-cheeked warbler habitat and in some instances black-capped vireo habitat also. There are numerous land trust and conservation easement holders throughout the Edwards Plateau. Without these, public lands just wouldn't be able to recover a species or maintain the population of species on its own.
Cooperation and partnerships between private landowners and conservation professionals will continue to be a priority for ensuring the availability of existing and future habitats for fish and wildlife in the Edwards Plateau.
One of the most important things we can do for the Edwards Plateau is that we can monitor our grazing regimes and incorporate those techniques that will best preserve the prairies that are in the Edwards Plateau. One of these management techniques could be the high-intensity, low-frequency rotation system. The benefit of that is that wild grasses are well adapted to occasional grazing. They're not well adapted to continuous grazing. So by breaking up that grazing intensity, you can really increase the value of your grasslands to wildlife.
Our population is expected to double in the next 20 to 30 years. With all that being said, we see the bright side to the Edwards Plateau and the wildlife, species that are dependent on it. Everything that's been put in the Texas Wildlife Action Plan is to benefit species throughout the Edwards Plateau. The implementation of this plan by both Texas Parks and Wildlife Department personnel, all the other individuals involved, the landowners, the consultants, the federal agencies, all will see the benefits to the wildlife species throughout the plateau.